My name is Elizabeth Monroe. I just turned 21 last Saturday, and I spent that night watching my birthday cake pushed to the end of the table, the candles nearly burned out, and no one bothering to blow them out. Our living room in Cedar Rapids was packed. Laughing, chatting, toasting, but it was all for my younger brother, Brandon. Not because it was his birthday. No, it was because Brandon had just landed an internship with the Iowa State Attorney's Office. A great opportunity, sure, but why celebrate it on my birthday? Why hijack the very party I'd spent a month planning and turn it into Brandon's personal spotlight? I sat quietly in the corner, wearing an old denim dress I bought at Goodwill, both hands clenched under the table to keep from shaking. My mother, Cheryl, held a champagne glass, crying tears of pride. My father smiled like Brandon had just been nominated U.S. Attorney General. "My son was born for justice," Mom said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Our family finally has someone who's going places." Not a single word about me. Not one hug or glance saying, "Happy birthday, Lizzie." The banner I hung up the night before, "Happy birthday, Elizabeth," had been replaced with a printed sign that read, "Congratulations, Brandon, our future hero." When Brandon stepped up to the center of the room, smiling and nodding, like a young politician, I felt a coldness settle in my chest. The only eyes that met mine were Grandma Marlene's and Tessa's, my best friend, peeking from the kitchen doorway. They knew. They saw it all. Brandon grabbed the microphone. "Thank you all for being here. This is the first step on my journey into justice." I stood up. "What? Convenient timing for a celebration?" I said. Not loud, but sharp enough to slice the room into silence. My mom turned around, smile frozen. "Elizabeth, don't ruin this." "Ruin what, Mom?" I stepped forward, heart pounding. "It's my birthday today, or did you forget? Or maybe you decided it wasn't as important as Brandon's internship." My father walked over, his voice low. "Don't be childish. Brandon's success is a big deal for the whole family. You should support your brother." "Support?" I almost laughed. I've been his support for 21 years. Every award I earned, every effort I made, always overshadowed by one essay Brandon wrote or some glossy magazine photo. Brandon stepped closer, voice soft. "Lizzie, come on. Don't call me that." I stepped back, voice like ice. "You weren't the one being ignored every time you tried to get Mom and Dad to look at you. You weren't the one working 2 jobs just to buy a dress and still getting told you looked sloppy. You're blowing this way out of proportion," Mom snapped, her eyes red with frustration. I nodded, lips trembling but voice steady. "So, I'm not your daughter anymore, is that it? Just because I dared to say this was supposed to be my day?" "You can leave if you feel like no one wants you here," Dad said bluntly. The room fell dead silent. I looked around. Relatives frozen, some avoiding my gaze, others staring at me like I was the one ruining everything. Only Grandma came forward, laid a hand on my shoulder, and whispered, "You're not wrong." I turned away, grabbed my small purse from the shoe rack, and walked out without looking back. The night air felt colder than usual, but at least it was real. At least it wasn't pretending. My phone buzzed, a text from Tessa. "Room's ready, don't come back unless you want to." I replied, "Thank you, I'm on my way." And Tessa, "Yeah? I'm about to show them just how badly they misjudged me." I'd been staying at Tessa's for 2 days when the strange emptiness finally settled in. No more Mom calling Brandon to breakfast like he was a general. No more Dad's blank stare every time I voiced an opinion. Tessa's room was tiny, just enough for a single bed and an old bookshelf. But for the first time in years, the air around me felt clean. Tessa worked as a barista at Fairgrounds Cafe on Main Street. She talked to people like they were lifelong friends, even if they were first-time customers. As for me, I needed a job. I needed money. I needed something that was mine. "Oh, I already talked to the manager," Tessa said, as she poured coffee into a chipped ceramic mug. "Sarah, the owner, super chill. You start Monday. Morning shift, 8 o'clock. I nodded, a bit of the weight lifting off my chest. But that same Sunday morning, my phone rang. "Grandma Marlene? Are you safe, Elizabeth?" Her voice was low and urgent. "I need to see you. Can't say this over the phone." Lincoln Park Duck Pond Bench. 4 o'clock. I arrived on time. The spring breeze was crisp, the lake surface rippling beneath a dull gray sky. She was already seated, a thick yellow folder in her lap, a wool scarf wrapped around her neck. She handed me a hot cocoa and flipped the folder open. "I've kept this for over 4 years. But I had to wait until you turned 21. I looked down at dense papers, filled with figures and fine print. Bank statements, wire transfers. A letter that read, "Trust fund established by Richard Monroe. Grandfather of Elizabeth. Initial value, $180,000, 0 cents. Trustee, Derek Monroe." My chest tightened. They told me there was no trust. That Grandpa only set one up for Brandon. She met my eyes. "Derek lied. They spent your trust on Brandon for over a decade. Private school tuition, law camps, enrichment programs. And that SUV he got for his 18th birthday." I flipped through more pages. Every withdrawal bore my father's signature. Some included notes like, "Reallocating to Brandon, family priority." "You could have gone to college debt-free," she whispered. "You could have studied psychology like you wanted." But they drained everything. I remembered that parent-teacher conference, in senior year, when I got a partial scholarship and asked to apply to NYU. Mom said we couldn't afford it. Dad said, "Be realistic." I sat frozen on the bench. Everything she said matched every fractured memory I'd spent years burying. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I wasn't allowed. Derek threatened to cut off all contact with you if I interfered." I closed my eyes, rage rising in waves. It wasn't about the money. It was the betrayal. They didn't just steal my future, they handed it to the son they worshipped like royalty. "Do you have backups?" She nodded. "USB, print copies, scans. Your grandfather taught me. Never keep only one version of the truth." I clutched the file tight. "Tessa has a scanner at work," I said. "I'll upload everything to the cloud, encrypted. I won't let them erase this." She placed her hand on mine, slightly trembling. "Be careful. Brandon may not know, but Derek and Cheryl. If they find out you're digging, they won't sit back." I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I saw real fear on the face of the woman who'd always been my safest place. But for me, there was no turning back. On the drive back, I passed our old house. The second-floor window was still open. My old room. The lights inside were on. The party was over. But their world remained untouched. I stopped, staring at the wooden sign out front. "The Monroe family. Where traditions are preserved." I laughed. No sound came out. Just a breath that scraped my throat. I didn't expect things to escalate so quickly. Just 2 days after meeting with Grandma Marlene, the Monroe household had already begun to unravel. That evening, I got a text from Haley, my cousin on my mother's side, currently interning in my father's accounting office. The message was short and urgent. "Liz, you need to come now, they know. Uncle Derek is destroying documents. I managed to hide a few, but I can't hold on to them much longer." My heart pounded. I called Tessa immediately, asking her to secure the digital copies I had scanned. Then I drove straight to the old house, back into the territory of the people who once called me their daughter. The house was unusually quiet. No TV sounds, no mom muttering while tidying up. I circled to the side entrance, where Haley said she'd leave it unlocked. The door creaked open with a light push. Inside, the glow from Dad's study flickered like a spark about to ignite. I tiptoed through the hallway, barely breathing. The sound of crumpling paper, a flicking lighter, and my father's low curses crept through the cracked door. Peeking in, I saw him tossing a stack of papers into the old fireplace. My mom stood beside him, pale-faced, trembling as she held a file box. A few documents still bore Central State Bank stamps. I lifted my phone and hit record. Video was too risky. Not if they caught me. "How much do you think Elizabeth knows?" Mom whispered. "No idea," Dad replied, his voice razor-sharp. "But if we burn everything before she acts, it won't matter. The trust can't be proven without the original files." "What about Marlene?" "I think she might have given something to Liz." Dad paused, flame flickering across his face, jaw clenched. "I told you not to let that old woman get involved. If Elizabeth has anything from her..." He didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he hurled the remaining files into the roaring fire. I backed away, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear. As I slipped through the back door, I nearly collided with Haley. "Did you get anything?" she asked, face pale. "I got audio. But I need the paperwork." Haley shakily pulled a large envelope from her coat. "These are the statements I printed this morning. Bank seals on them, full transaction history from 2013. I gripped the envelope tight. "You carried this on you?" "It's safer than keeping it at home. I didn't know what else to do but help you." I grabbed her hand, truly moved. "Thank you. But you need to leave. If they find out you helped, they won't let it slide." "What about you?" "I've got a plan." I uploaded the audio to a backup email account, encrypted it twice. Then, I had Tessa reach out to Grandma's lawyer, Harold Dean, the same man who handled my grandfather's estate. "He's trustworthy," Grandma said on the phone. "I anticipated this. And Elizabeth, I'm proud of you." That night, I lay in Tessa's room, poring over each page Haley had handed me, cross-checking them with Grandma's earlier scans. Every transfer, every number, every inconsistency lined up too perfectly. There it was. Undeniable proof. Over $160,000, 0 cents had been siphoned from my trust. Used to cover Brandon Monroe's tuition, enrichment programs, and his so-called talent development. I played the audio again, hearing my father's voice as casual as if he were talking about trimming the hedges. "We did it for the greater good. That girl had no clear future. Investing in Brandon made sense." I scoffed. Investing? In someone who'd been handed everything on a silver platter? My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "I know you have the recording. If you're keeping it, watch your back." I stared at the screen. They knew. 3 days after the threat, I got an unexpected message from the last person I ever thought would reach out. "Brandon." He said just one line. "We need to talk." Alone. The location, Bluebell Bakery, on the corner of Elm Street. The place Mom used to take both of us when we were in elementary school. A choice that felt loaded. It arrived early. Brandon was already there, sitting by the window. No prosecutor suit, no confident smile. Just a gray hoodie, messy hair, dark circles under his eyes. For the first time in his life, my younger brother looked like a regular person. "I know everything," Brandon said before I even sat down. "The trust fund, the transfers, and the life insurance." I gripped my coffee cup. The warmth didn't stop the chill crawling up my spine. "Who told you?" "Mum," he said quietly. "Last night? I overheard her on the phone with Dad. She was talking about handling things early, if she keeps digging. They thought I was asleep." I said nothing, eyes focused on the street outside, refusing to meet his. But inside, I was screaming. Handling things early? They'd actually planned a scenario if I didn't stay silent? I didn't think it was this bad, Brandon went on. My whole life, I lived in a bubble they built for me. And I believed it. So, what do you want now? I turned to look him straight in the eyes. To help you, to expose everything. At the family gathering at Westfield Lake House next week. Everyone will be there. They can't hide it if you go public there. I smirked. And why should I believe this isn't just another setup? That you're not luring me there so they can handle me after all? Brandon lowered his head and slid a small USB across the table. This contains all the details of the life insurance policy Mom took out. $5 million. Payable only if you died before turning 21. It expired on your birthday. Each word landed like a hammer to the chest. She celebrated that day, I whispered, almost to myself. That was the same day she turned my birthday into your victory party. And I saw it all when I read the policy, Brandon said slowly. You had to survive your birthday for her to get nothing? I closed my eyes. Anger, hurt, fear. All of it built into one tight knot inside me. Then I opened them again, voice firm. I'll go to the lake house. Brandon nodded. You won't be alone. I already contacted Grandma Marlene's lawyer. Mr. Dean is preparing the files, high-res slides, all cross-referenced. And me? I'll be standing with you. Saturday afternoon, the Westfield Lake House looked like something out of a painting. Still waters reflecting the setting sun. The trees whispering in the breeze. It was peaceful, in the most artificial way. Relatives poured in from everywhere. Aunt Olivia from Ohio, Uncle Frank from Denver. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. My mother beamed, welcoming everyone in her sea-moo satin dress. My father stood by the entrance, wineglass in hand, wearing his signature navy suit. I walked in, shoulders square, gaze sharp. Brandon followed close behind, carrying the case with the presentation gear. Mr. Dean was already inside, standing near the reception hall, where an LED screen had been discreetly installed. You sure? He asked quietly. I nodded. They think this is a family reunion. But this will be their first trial. My mother stepped into the center of the hall, raising her glass. Dear Monroe family, she began. Today is not only a time to reunite, but to recognize the next generation. Brandon, who will carry forward our family legacy. Polite applause echoed through the room. I stepped forward. The spotlight caught me, just as I spoke. Before Mom says anything more, maybe everyone here should know how that legacy has been managed for the last 10 years. The room fell silent. I looked at Brandon. He nodded slightly. Mr. Dean hit the switch. The screen lit up. Documents appeared. Fund transfers, insurance paperwork, manipulated trust statements. Every line, every number exposed under the light like blood on snow. This, I said, is how my parents preserved our legacy. By stealing the trust my grandfather left me. By funneling it all into creating the perfect golden boy. And by setting up a replacement plan, in case I didn't cooperate. My mother stepped forward, face pale. Elizabeth, you don't understand what you're doing. No, Mom, I said slowly. You don't understand what I know. The air inside the Westfield Lake House banquet hall was thick like the calm before a storm. After my mother's opening speech, every eye turned toward the large screen up front, where documents no one expected began appearing, one by one. I stood in the center, microphone in hand, my voice steady. This is the statement from the trust fund my grandfather, Richard Monroe, established in 2002. One trust for each grandchild, equal value. Brandon and me. But as you can see, I pointed to the transfers. From 2013 to 2021, over $160,000 from my trust was redirected to accounts, directly funding Brandon's tuition, law camps, and personal expenses. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Aunt Olivia turned to her husband. Law camp? Paid for with Elizabeth's money? I continued. Not just tuition. Here's the receipt for the Cadillac Escalade Brandon received on his 18th birthday. Paid for with the trust card. Signed by my father, Derek Monroe, the legal trustee. Brandon stepped forward beside me, eyes locked on the crowd. And I, he said, was someone who truly believed everything I got was earned. I was wrong. My mother abruptly stepped in. We can talk about this in private, Elizabeth. This is a family matter. No need to embarrass anyone in front of outsiders. I looked at her, cold. Outsiders? These people are our family. You're the one who turned me into a stranger. Mr. Dean, Grandma Marlene's attorney, spoke next, voice sharp. We're not done. Laura and Derek still have a lot to explain. He pressed a button, and the screen switched to a new file. The original death certificate for Richard Monroe. Stating, cause of death, chronic heart failure. Then came the suppressed autopsy report, secretly preserved by Marlene. Traces of ethylene glycol. Antifreeze, found in his blood. The hall went still. I couldn't breathe. Brandon stepped back, speechless, and I stared at my parents like they were strangers, wearing my parents' skin. My grandfather wrote a new will, I said. He planned to restructure the company's leadership, but before he could finalize it, he conveniently fell down the stairs. Grandma Marlene stepped forward, holding an old leather briefcase. The room hushed. Richard never fell, she said. He was a Marine. His balance was better than anyone's here. She opened the case and revealed a handwritten will, time-stamped and notarized. In it, Elizabeth Monroe, me, was named co-executor of the company alongside Brandon, conditional on both of us turning 21. But your parents didn't want to wait, she said. And when Elizabeth began asking questions, they purchased a $5 million life insurance policy. Only valid if she died before her 21st birthday. I turned toward my mother. She couldn't speak. My father, pale but still trying to keep control, said, everything we did was for Brandon, for the future of the company. The company? I narrowed my eyes. Built on what? A child's life? Money that rightfully belonged to your daughter? Mr. Dean held up one final document. A list of internal loans drawn from other family trust funds. College funds for Olivia's kids, gone. Medical aid for Uncle Frank's son, denied. Anger burst through the room. My relatives, the same ones who'd once looked right through me, now turned on my parents, faces filled with betrayal and outrage. I stepped closer, staring directly at the two people who brought me into this world. Was I just a bet? An investment that didn't pay off when your insurance policy expired? Were you disappointed I made it past my birthday and didn't die? Laura trembled, barely able to speak. You're being manipulated. Someone's feeding you lies. I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Her voice, on the night before my birthday, speaking to my father. If she keeps digging, we'll have to take care of it early. Silence. Heavy as a stone, crashing into a still lake. Mr. Dean's voice dropped. I've already forwarded everything to the state attorney's office. Elizabeth, would you like to say anything to close this? I looked around. At my relatives, Brandon, and Grandma Marlene. Then back to my parents, hollow and motionless, like carved wood. Yes, I said, voice low but unwavering. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for justice. And today I found it in my mother's own voice. Police sirens pierced the air as a black SUV from the Iowa State Police turned into the gates of the Westfield Lake House. Red and blue lights rippled across the calm surface of the lake, reflecting off the windows of the house that, just minutes earlier, had served as the stage for a carefully crafted family legacy announcement. My father froze as two officers entered, hands resting near their belts. My mother took a step back, as if trying to retreat from her own guilt, though her eyes remained cold. almost chilling. "Mr. Derek Monroe, Mrs. Laura Monroe," one officer read aloud. "You are under arrest for abuse of financial guardianship, document forgery, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit premeditated homicide. You are advised to remain silent and comply." Gasps swept through the room. Aunt Linda muttered, "Oh my God!" while Uncle Frank collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands like someone waking from a 10-year nightmare. I stood still. Not triumphant, not angry, just a strange emptiness. Like the final scene of a nightmare playing out while I was still trying to remember I'd woken up. My mother turned to me, voice rasping but strained to sound firm. "You'll never understand the pressure we were under." I looked her straight in the eye. "No one forced you to gamble your daughter's life to solve your problems." The officers cuffed them on the spot. Cold steel around the wrists of the very people who had spent my entire life controlling me, with fear disguised as love. As they were led away, I turned my back. Not because I couldn't face them, but because I no longer needed to. Once the police SUV disappeared beyond the tree line, a strange silence settled over the house. Not one of shock, but of something ending. Or beginning. Grandma Marlene was the first to rise. "Thank you, both of you," she said. "Not just for Elizabeth, but for everyone in this room. Those who were lied to, silenced, and made to feel alone." I lifted my head. Her gaze was both gentle and unyielding, like the way she once raised my father, but now used to repair the damage he had caused. Brandon stood beside me, voice steadier than ever. "I promise, every dollar taken from those trust funds will be returned to its rightful beneficiary. College funds, medical assistance, investment accounts, all of it will be audited and disclosed publicly." Aunt Olivia, whose 2 children were denied internal scholarships, broke into tears. Uncle Frank, father of Thomas, the boy who lost his medical support, gripped my hand. "Thank you, Elizabeth. You didn't just save yourself." I took a deep breath. I can't change the past, but I can promise this. From now on, Monroe & Co. will no longer be a house of deceit and favoritism. It will be a company built on trust and accountability. Applause followed. Hesitant at first, then stronger. Not celebration, but recognition. A way of saying, "We saw, we understand, and we're with you." 1 week later, Brandon and I held our first press conference at the Monroe & Co. headquarters in downtown Cedar Rapids. Behind us was a new banner, "Rebuilding Legacy with Truth." Brandon began. "We're not here to deny the blood that connects us to the founders of this company, but we are also not here to protect their crimes." I continued. "For over a decade, financial decisions were made based on privilege and favoritism. As of today, every expenditure and investment will be reviewed by an independent advisor. And we're relaunching the scholarship program my grandfather created, the one that was derailed by greed." A reporter asked, "Elizabeth, if your parents contest this, are you afraid of getting dragged into legal battles?" I answered without hesitation. "I've been hurt enough to know what's worth protecting. And it's not someone else's reputation, it's fairness. For me, and for those who were quietly left behind." As the press began to leave, Brandon turned to me. "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" I paused for a long moment before answering. "Forgiveness isn't for their peace. It's for mine. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And you know what, Brandon? You are a victim too. In a different way." He nodded, eyes heavy. "For the first time, I see everything clearly." I smiled. Not joyfully, but with relief. "And for the first time in your life, you're finally seeing the truth." 3 weeks after my parents were arrested, I received a handwritten letter from Grandma Marlene. The slanted, elegant handwriting was unmistakable. She didn't say much. Just one line. "You should go to the old cellar behind the Willow Grove farm. Bring Brandon." Willow Grove had once been where my grandfather grew grapes and aged homemade wine. As a child, I spent afternoons there, learning to tie vines, distinguish flavor notes in different barrels. After he passed, the land was abandoned, never spoken of again. That afternoon, Brandon and I drove out to the farm. The wind picked up. Gray clouds gathered, like another storm was on its way. The old wine cellar was hidden behind rows of leafless pear trees. The lock had been replaced with a digital keypad. Next to it, a note taped to the wall read, "Elizabeth's birthday." I typed in the code. The door clicked open. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and cold soil. Yet it was remarkably clean. In the center stood a large wall-embedded safe, covered by a faded gray canvas. Brandon quietly pulled the cover away. The safe was already unlocked. Inside, a small oak box, a thick envelope, and an old leather-bound journal. I opened the box first. Nestled inside was a gold and silver wristwatch engraved, "For EMB, when you're ready, not when they want you to be." Brandon exhaled. "ENB. Elizabeth and Brandon." I nodded, then picked up the journal. Pages upon pages of our grandfather's handwritten notes, spanning from 1980 to 2002. Each line revealed a truth no one had ever told us. He suspected his son, my father, of greed early on. He created 3 separate trusts, one for me, one for Brandon, and one for a nonprofit called R&J Trust, designed to support youth from abusive households. "Oh, Grandpa was beaten by his own father," I read aloud from one entry. "He never wanted a child to feel unloved the way he once did." Brandon opened the envelope. Inside was the full blueprint for R&J Trust. Bank accounts, community partnerships, and, most importantly, a notarized letter granting control of the trust to Elizabeth and Brandon, upon both reaching age 21 and becoming legally independent from their parents. I sank into a dusty wooden chair, speechless. His real legacy wasn't money. It wasn't the assets my parents tore apart. It was a mission. Brandon sat beside me. "Do you think we're capable of this?" I looked at him. My brother, who once symbolized everything I resented. Now, I saw a man trying to fix what he didn't break, but could no longer ignore. "He didn't choose us because we were ready," I said slowly. "He chose us because he believed, when the truth came out, we wouldn't run from it." We left the farm just as the sun dipped below the trees. Inside me, a strange calm. Not an ending, but a turning point. The next day, I returned to the company with all the R&J Trust documents. At the board meeting, I announced the relaunch of the organization, now a formal nonprofit branch of Monroe & Co., fully independent in funding, dedicated to helping abused youth. The room fell quiet. Then, slowly, applause broke out. Brandon stood and addressed the staff. "We used to be a family built on control and secrecy. Today, we rebuild. On trust, transparency, and responsibility." I smiled, a real smile. 1 month later, at R&J Trust's relaunch event, Grandma Marlene stepped onto the small stage as golden sunlight washed over the lawn like aged wine. She took the microphone, voice trembling but clear. "My son took the wrong path. But my grandchildren refused to follow. That is the true legacy of this family. Not wealth, but the courage to break the cycle." When she turned around, I walked up and took her hand. The wrinkles, the calluses, fingers that had protected the truth for a lifetime, were now passing it on to me. Not for revenge, but for a new beginning. And this time, it would be built on truth. Elizabeth's story proves that sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom, it comes from the courage to face the truth. In real life, some families trade love for power and money, but there are people like Elizabeth who are strong enough to break that cycle. She didn't just reclaim what was stolen, She redefined legacy through honesty and compassion. The message is clear. Truth may be hidden, but it can never stay buried forever. What do you think about Elizabeth's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and emotional stories about family and life.